What is your favorite tool in your shop? Well, I couldn't begin to tell you, but I can tell you what your family's favorite tool is. It's also the favorite of your neighbors and anyone else who lives within a 10-minute drive. And that's your saw stand, because that's the tool that holds up the other end of the board so they don't have to. I can also tell you that with a little ingenuity, this tool can be made to do so much more than just hold up a board. Your family is going to love you for it. Your neighbors may even bake you a lasagna. Ow. A saw stand is that third hand that you need to handle boards that are too large or too big to handle safely by yourself. It's most often used with your table saw, hence the name saw stand. But you'll quickly find that it's also an invaluable accessory for your planer, joiner, router table, drill press, sander, radial arm saw, bandsaw, every single one of your stationary power tools. It's this simplicity that makes a saw stand so useful and so versatile. There are many different ways to build a saw stand and many different options that you can include to extend their capabilities. Experienced woodworkers often customize their saw stands to help perform those three-handed tasks that they most often need help with. With that in mind, I'm going to show you not just how to build one of these, but the options and the add-ons that you can include to create a stand that best satisfies your specific workshop needs. At first glance, it's a dirt simple tool. There is a stand of some sort, which supports a roller or transfer device of some sort, and some sort of means to adjust the height of the roller or transfer device above the floor. One more important note. A saw stand is likely to be one of the very first fixtures that you make for your shop, often before you have a full complement of tools. So I have designed the basic stand to be made with 3/4 inch or 19 millimeter stock, no planing or joining required. The joinery is limited to face and edge glue joints. In short, you can build this stand with a table saw and a hand drill. A drill press is handy, but not absolutely necessary as long as you have a good eye and a steady hand. Let's begin at the bottom. I have found through experience that a three-legged or a three-footed stand works best. Few of us have the advantage of a completely level shop floor. And a three-legged stand never rocks, even on an uneven surface. I found that the simplest way to make a three-point stand is to use a T-frame as the base, with square pads for the feet. I've sized the T so that if you draw a 24-inch or 61 centimeter circle, the pads contact the circumference 120 degrees apart. The post that supports the head of the saw stand is right in the center of the circle. This arrangement provides maximum stability, provided that the post is straight up and down. Well, what if it's not? What if you need to level the base in order to make the post vertical or the head horizontal? Well, that can be a real problem in a shop like mine. My floor was laid down in 1922, and there have been some major plate tectonics since then. So, how do I level the base? Or, at the very least, make it match the tilt of the table saw? One way is to install a T-nut in the bottom surface of each foot and thread a large hex bolt up through the T-nut, head down. This has got to be an all-thread hex bolt, sometimes called a tap bolt. Note that I've installed the T-nut in a counterbore. This is deep enough so that I can retract the head of the hex bolt into the foot completely should I need to. On the end of the bolt that sticks up above the foot, install a knob and lock it in place with a jam nut. This makes it easy to turn the hex bolt and raise or lower the foot. I've noticed that the threaded knobs are getting a little pricey, so if you want to save some money, use a hole saw to cut a small circle from a scrap of wood and then fasten it to the business end of the hex bolt with 2 jam nuts. This works just as well. Usually you can level the head simply by turning 2 of the 3 bolts in the feet. First level the head side to side, then front to back. Or the other way around. Incidentally, I'm using my phone and a Spirit Level app to level this base. And if you'd like to do this old school, you can use an actual spirit level. You can also deal with the leveling problem by making a saw stand with a tilting head. On this saw stand, the head is glued to the post at a fixed 90 degrees, but on this saw stand, the head tilts right and left 10 degrees. This shows you how it works. The head pivots on a bolt near the top of the post. The corners of the post are cut back, but only by a few degrees. This allows the head to tilt, but only slightly. The advantage of a tilting head is that it's quick and easy. Loosen the pivot bolt and place the saw stand under the board that you want to support. Raise the head until it contacts the board and swivel the head until it matches the face of the board. Then lock the post at the correct height and the head at the correct angle. I have this set up at the conical sander, which takes a 4-degree tilt. One of the disadvantages of using just the tilting head is it can leave the post at a slight angle. You'll get better support if the post is straight up and down. So the best system is to have a tilting head and a base that you can level. The base must also provide a way for you to easily adjust the height of the saw stand so you can use it with different tools and for different operations. To do this, I've made a telescoping post. The post has a long groove down the middle and it's encased in a 3-sided trough or frame. A bolt with the knob passes through a groove in the post and a hole in the frame. To change the height of the stand, simply loosen the knob, slide the post up or down, and then retighten the knob. There are 2 ways to make the grooves that you need. The grooves that you've seen so far have been routed on a router table. To do this, first of all, drill 2 holes in the post to mark the ends of the groove to be. Mount a straight bit in your router the same size as the holes you drilled. Place 1 hole over the bit and bring the fence in against the post. To check your setup, remove the post and put the other hole over the bit. The fence should still be snug against the post. Route the groove in several passes, routing no more than 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters deep with each pass. Start at 1 hole and stop when you get to the other hole that marks the end of the groove. Flip the board end for end and face for face and route again. When you've routed both faces, raise the bit. Continue until you've routed the groove all the way through the post. What if you're new to woodworking and you don't yet have a router table? Well, no worries. You can glue up a post with a groove from 4 separate pieces of wood, just like that. In addition to making the height adjustable, you must also give some thought to the range of heights. What's the lowest and the tallest height that you will need? Most table saws and a host of other woodworking tools have their working surfaces at countertop height. That's about 36 inches or 92 centimeters above the floor. So, somewhere in your saw stand's height range should be 36 inches or 92 centimeters. Now consider the highest and the lowest work surfaces in your shop. In my shop, the highest is the bandsaw table. It's about 48 inches or 122 centimeters above the ground. And the jointer is at 26 inches or 66 centimeters above the floor. That's a range of 22 inches or 56 centimeters. With the simple telescopic mechanism that I'm using, the wider the range, the higher the saw stand has to be at its lowest point. So if I make this saw stand high enough at its high point to use with the bandsaw, I can't get it low enough to use with the jointer. Now I know there are other telescopic mechanisms that I could use, but they all add complexity and expense. So to keep it simple and cheap, I just decided to make 2 saw stands. And to save even more expense, you can make the post frames so that they're detachable from the base itself. Just remove a few bolts and swap out the long one for the short one. There are some operations in which you must adjust the height of the saw stand with precision. This is especially true when you're using the saw stand with your jointer. And there is a simple accessory that you can add to your stand that will allow you to sort of dial in the height that you need. Cut dados in the post frame sides every 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Cut a small board to fit those dados on the assembled post frame. Insert a T-nut in this small board and install an all-thread hex bolt in the nut. That's your adjuster. To use it, raise the post and insert the adjuster slightly below where you want the bottom of the post to be. Lower the post until it touches the head of the hex bolt. Using an open-end wrench to turn the bolt, raise or lower the post slowly until the saw stand is right where you want it. Then lock the post in place. Here's something you might like to know about this device. You almost never need to raise a stand like this by the numbers, but I've used a 3/8 16-pitch bolt here, which means that if I turn this exactly 1 full turn, I raise the stand 1/16 of an inch. Half a turn, 1/32 of an inch. Now, if I had used an M10 bolt here, okay, 1 full turn would raise that 1.5 millimeters. Turn it 2 faces, that's 0.5 millimeters. Good to know. The classic head for a saw stand is a roller. This is a long metal transfer roller. And I've made many a stand using just an ordinary rolling pin. They work just fine. The trouble is, rollers don't work well for everything. If you don't get the roller set perfectly perpendicular to the feed direction, the roller tends to pull the board right or left as you're feeding it. To prevent this, some woodworkers prefer a line of ball bearings. These have omnidirectional feed, but these too have their drawbacks. No matter how tightly you pack the bearings, there will be spaces between them, and narrow workpieces will find those spaces and drop down. And sometimes, all you need is a plain flat surface. So I've designed these saw stands so they have interchangeable heads. You can choose the rollers, the bearings, or just plain unadorned wood. Each head is held to the stand with carriage bolts and wing nuts, so they are easy to attach and detach. All the heads you see here are the same size, but you can make them any size you need. Ordinarily, you use a saw stand next to a tool. You don't connect the two, but you can if you want, and you can use that connection to provide additional support. This is an auxiliary work surface. It's hinged to the head, and it will fold up when you need it and down when you don't. The hinge is carefully positioned so that when the surface is folded up, the ball bearings protrude just about 5/1000 of an inch above it. That way they still function to help feed or transfer the workpiece. Now, this isn't as hard to do as you might think. When we attach the work surface to the bearing head, we simply put the bearing head upside down on a flat surface, then put the work surface next to it with a few pieces of paper between the surface and the bench. One leaf of the hinge was already attached to the work surface. Then we attach the other leaf to the edge of the head. When the leaf is folded up, the surface will be exactly the thickness of 2 pieces of paper, or about 5/1000 of an inch, below the tops of the bearings. The other end of the auxiliary work surface needs to connect to the tool whose surface you wish to extend. Now, there are many ways to do this, and I'm going to show you 2. The first is overlapping angle bars, one attached to the tool and the other to the work surface. Rest one bracket over the other and drill the overlapping leaves so you can pin them together with clevis pins. The second is to install several L-shaped screw hooks to the end of the auxiliary surface and mount a board on the tool and drill it to receive these hooks. The advantage of this system is that it's easy to engage and disengage the auxiliary surface. The disadvantage is that the hooks sometimes get bent. One more tip concerning the auxiliary work surface: chamfer the edges. This helps the work slide off the tool and onto the work surface without catching. You know, this is actually the most useful accessory that you can make for your saw stand. Ours is in almost constant use as an outfeed table for our table saw, except when it's needed elsewhere. Once you get a saw stand built up the way you want it, your final concern is how do you get it to stay where you've put it? Your standalone power tools are all pretty heavy enough that they'll stay where they are when you're pushing work across them. But that's not necessarily the case with the saw stand. This thing is light enough that it can be easily nudged, scooted, even tipped over. Fortunately, most woodworkers already have a solution to this problem thanks to our dominant pack rat gene. You and I have been saving derelict hardware all our lives just for this occasion. Make 3 small boxes that will drape over the legs of your stand. You probably have enough wood scraps to make these boxes thanks to the same gene. Fill the boxes full of hardware that you have been meaning to sort but have never gotten around to. Screw the lids down. Don't glue them. If you just screw them, you will be able to get at the hardware if you ever need it. You never will, of course, but at least you won't have to feel guilty about it. And by the way, if your pack rat genes are still in their formative period, or you're one of those disgusting people that actually sorts their hardware, you could use sand or gravel. Pretty sturdy. One more tip. Everything you see here was glued up using our assembly table. It does a stellar job of keeping everything flat, true, and square, especially if you're building up the thicker pieces from thinner stock. You can find out more about it by following the link in the description or at the end of this video. The plans for both the assembly table and the saw stand, including all the options I just showed you, are available from our store. The link is in the description or it's hovering somewhere in the upper right-hand corner. It's everything you need to build a customized stand and a shop assistant you never need to pay. Your spouse will breathe easier, your kids will stop avoiding you, and your neighbors, well, I can almost smell the lasagna. They may even lift the restraining order.